And welcome back to another episode of Pinoys versus the World. My name is Jonas Hyllseth.
My name is Chris Ankiko.
And Chris, we're outside in the real world, bringing you all our first YouTube video on the channel, the newly minted Pinoys versus the World YouTube channel. Chris, anything to say to the hopefully still audio listeners, maybe new viewers, listeners, just in general? This is huge. What a moment for us.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, hopefully, if you've been listening on audio, you'd want to check this out. This is definitely a new type of setup for us. We got these new mics. We got these little Superman sticks. Very thematic today,
Very
I would
thematic.
say. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. We're still definitely gonna be working out the kinks during this recording, but hopefully it'll mostly run smoothly. So.
I mean, still coming to you live. Now live, we have an in-person conversation for the first time since we've started this new version of the pod together. I mean,
yeah, we've actually never spoken in person before.
First time we've ever met.
Yeah, hi, my name's Chris.
Hi, my name's not Harold.
We've never spoken in person. I didn't know you were that tall.
We talked about this before. I am the elongated version of you.
Yeah, the way we're dressed, gray shirt, black shorts. I acknowledge we're very similar looking, except for my hat.
Incredible.
And yeah, again, it's like thinned out me is him.
Truncated
me. Him is me.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it too is that you don't have to leave too far from where you both work and live, because we are in XD's backyard. We love XD's backyard. You are a tenant. It makes XD sound like the just worst landlord. But if you're gonna rent from a landlord, rent from your friends, my people.
Yeah, that's very true. You get it, especially in Seattle. It's a nice deal. But no, definitely shout out to XD for doing all the work on this space over the last few years.
None of this is us.
These chairs are his. The table's his. The backdrop here is his. I mean, it's just like, yeah.
Facebook Marketplace?
Appreciate it. Yeah, Facebook Marketplace.
He loves Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace plus lots of elbow grease equals this. Yeah.
Lots of it. I mean, 5% elbow grease. There's another vibe too from us having our first recording here in the backyard with planes above. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it in post, but that is the beauty of filming in South King County. We're keeping this in. But yeah, coming to you live still from Seattle. I want to get a few thank yous out of the way, because this has been a while coming. We're just so happy to keep doing something that we love to do with each other, which is chat about movies, shows, music, all of the above. Obviously today we're chatting about the big S, the big symbol of hope, the brand new Superman, James Gunn Superman, Chris. But again, we would not be here today without a few very key people coming along the way. So I mean, shout out Camille Naputo. We have moved on to a new logo, but she will always be the first one who made it our first logo. We got to shout her out in every little bit of the credits before and after. So we'll have a new little credit roll at the end here. Shout out Jess Juanich, the original co-host of mine from when we started this pod 4 years ago, which is kind of weird that it's been that long. It's coming and going and with different forms. And obviously now I'm here with my best friends, Chris and Kiko.
What's up?
Oh, hey, that's what I'm talking about.
I didn't know
we're doing live now.
I was like, your hand was out there, so I was like, I'll just reach for it.
This is beauty. We're keeping this all in too. Yeah. No editing. We got to make this as easy.
No editing
as possible for Jonas to do.
I don't think so. Well, you're going to be doing it. You're going to be editing this first one.
I'm editing this first one.
Yeah.
It should be fun. I've never actually edited video before like this, just audio. But before we drone too long on things not related to movies, just final shout outs for Devin Holsey, Jared Garalde, Doug Snyder, and many, many more friends that we've had on the pod that if you continue to come through, and I'm going to say it right now, hey, subscribe, drop a subscribe below. Why not? It's the first time that we get to say that. To keep hearing conversations about all of the above with many of our friends. We don't have anyone of note coming on here, but we got some homies that
Andrew
also
Lever,
love these.
I will say Andrew Lever also, aka
Lark.
Yeah, on our
Shout
Minecraft review. That was great. Listen to that.
Shout out for giving us our greatest our highest numbers
for our audio
movie
thing. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That was great.
So hoping folks can join us along for this journey as many YouTube channels begin. But we are really happy to be here and will not be able to move forward without one last thank you. Jonas Hyllseth for putting together so much of this YouTube channel behind the scenes, and will continue to be our executive producer. New logo, new backdrops, new music, everything. He's kind of the extraordinaire learning. On the roll, Chris, you're kind of mentoring him a little bit. I will say, I feel like you're mentoring him a little bit with your knowledge of the editing space.
I try. I mean, I just like, shout out to you guys because I edit full time. And so I'm probably not going to do too much, behind the scenes stuff because I just don't have the time or bandwidth to do it. So I appreciate y'all just taking it on, especially Jonas for learning a lot of new skills. We'll say, people are hiring out there. You should
Jonas Hyllseth.
Take a look.
He has a growing portfolio.
Yeah.
But Chris, now that we've gotten all those important names and thank yous out of the way and our little intro onto YouTube video, Chris, we're here to talk about the first installment of James Gunn's new DCU Superman. And we're going to jump into non-spoilers here at the beginning. If you're not familiar with the way we run our pod, be a little bit of a break after that. We'll jump into a spoiler review following that conversation. Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you in real life for the first time to talk to us about what you thought about Superman.
I'd say, like, in general, I think the movie mostly does a good job in starting the new universe. It's one of the most, we were talking about this earlier, it's one of the most comic book movies ever. It feels like we're going to talk about, like, where this drops you in, especially, like, throughout the conversation, but, like, it feels like you're dropped into, like, page 15 of a comic book. Like, you've skipped the first, like, few pages, and you're just dropped right into the middle of, like, something that's already in progress. It's, like, just, like, flipping the channels, and you just kind of, like, happen upon it. But I'd say it definitely packs a lot of different heroes and tones into one movie. It definitely feels like the start of the DC universe as opposed to just a standalone Superman movie. This is James Gunn wants to really hit the ground running for sure. I think it all mostly works kind of, getting all the tones and heroes in there. But I would say there's definitely some things you miss out on. I'd say mostly, like, the development with, like, Clark Kent is something I think we can sort of get into and talk about. But the biggest positive, I think, is that David Cornsweet as Superman is very, very good. I think no matter where you stand on this movie, he's great as Superman. I think he was a great choice. Definitely feels like return to a more hopeful Superman, a guy who sort of loves it. People mostly like him. And he's in it for the right reasons, even if someone like Lex is trying to, like, beat him down at every turn. It definitely feels like Lex is sort of there all the time to try to, like, agitate him and really kind of just, like, beat him into a corner. And, this Superman shows that he's not really, like, a cynic like maybe the previous Superman was. He's very, like, hopeful in the face of, like, in circumstances where he could get really down on himself, which I think is a cool return to form, I guess, for the character. It's very much also too like a Batman situation where he's, like, very, briefly into his career, and he's sort of, like, still getting used to being a hero and what that means for him. So I thought that was kind of a cool way to start, because it's, we're, like, midway kind of a little into his journey and also a little ways into the progress of the DCU, which is a very interesting way to start. So I think those are going to be my initial thoughts so far. What about you?
We're entering a new era for the DCU. You and I grew up watching the Zack Snyder universe of DCEU movies, and there's a lot to love there. We had a conversation yesterday with a friend of the pod, Jared, after watching this film opening night with lots of fans, folks who I think really in general enjoyed this stuff. But we found ourselves talking a little bit about Aquaman, Batman v Superman. We were talking about the highest grossing movies of all time, and that just kind of, when I got home, led to me thinking a bit more about what I thought about that era and why it just didn't resonate with me growing up a whole lot. From the very get-go, this film, like you said, it's 15 pages into a comic book that you really like. But I'll even take it one step further and be like, there's aspects of this where you don't even have to read the origin story, because everyone knows how Superman, for the most part, begun. Like, it kind of reminded me of watching Spider-Man: Homecoming for the first time, right? Like, we've been through two of these. You've got to have a bit of faith in the audience to understand the origin story is not the most important part of this, of the way that you're telling your iteration of Superman, for example, right? Or Spider-Man, or folks that we've seen over and over again. So to have faith in us to be able to be like, hey, we're just going to show you what a young, late 20s, early 30s Superman is going to be like. And obviously, we've talked about, or you just said, David Cornsweet he's that guy. He has the background in Juilliard. I got to watch a little interview with him doing some of the morning show routines on CBS, talking about his love for the theater. His acting repertoire kind of, like, led himself to be able to play two different types of characters. But you do say here some of the negatives I have, even with the positives of his performance as Soup, which, if that doesn't work, none of this works. So that is one check for good. I don't really think I'm the biggest fan of not having so much Clark Kent in here, but it leaves room for, again, having faith in the audience to enjoy, like, an origin story that throws us not only Superman, but several tertiary, secondary characters, from Lois Lane to Hawkgirl to Guy Gardner. We've got stellar performances across the board for the villains in this movie, obviously stolen by Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I love Lex Luthor in this movie. I think he is giving me something to love and look forward to about a main, like, antagonistic villain in, like, a cinematic universe that we haven't had since and if I say Thanos, I feel like there are two different types of antagonists too, right? But that's probably the one I can compare it to. But overall, music's, we'll talk about this a little bit more. Music is great. It is a little unoriginal, but it is still great, I think, in the concept of watching the whole film. The performances are 90 to 95% there. I think the writing lags a bit. I love the way that James Gunn shoots these superhero films, but obviously I don't think his dialogue has necessarily been my favorite things over the years. But I'm a fan of a couple of the Guardians of the Galaxies, like greatly 1 and 3 in particular, like we've talked about. But overall, I think we have not only the strongest foundation that any of these universes have had in quite a while, but the one that this universe needed after kind of the really turbulent era it went through with the DECU. So I am excited to see what comes out of the future of this. I think something that is lacking some of the discourse I've seen even 24 hours after people saw us yesterday, kind of around the time we saw it, was, look at this the way that I would like to look at it, which is a foundational piece that needs to land so that you can do the next 4, 5, 6 movies and we'll care about them. And then you also leave room for growth, which I'm excited to see how like a Superman 2 or Superman interacting with anyone for the Justice Gang to the future Batman, Supergirl, Wonder Woman, etc. is important. And I think that that's the most important thing this movie does, is lay the foundation in an enjoyable way. It is a summer blockbuster. You can bring anyone out there. I will say they do stretch the PG-13 rating of this movie a lot because there are some gruesome scenes that I did not expect. But again, I think it plays into the benefit of what makes DC versus like a Marvel. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I do have my criticisms, but I don't think they're anything that's going to keep me from wanting to see this a second and probably a third time in theaters soon.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes the big swing of, again, doing the universe already in progress and not doing it brick by brick like Marvel. You definitely feel like the pressure to sort of like, start this thing right away. Start with your biggest character, put like a bunch of heroes and villains into it, set up a world that is like very much built before we even see it. I feel like there's definitely a lot of like important things that happened before the movie started. And they're sort of like, kind of like explained in a bunch of like, we'll get into it, little text prompts at the very beginning. But it's an interesting way to start a movie. I think definitely it does place a lot of faith on the audience of, again, knowing the Superman origin story. And we'll get into this, but there's pros and cons of assuming your audience knows about it. Especially like, there's not that exposition there where, you don't see him like grow up. What did this version of Superman do in a world full of metahumans? How do people react to him coming out as Superman? How does the public react? How did he join the Daily Planet, sort of thing? I think that's sort of like, in hindsight, I kind of missed that. But like in the moment, it's very interesting to watch a movie that starts basically at 60 miles an hour.
Literally, I mean, Superman is coming in off the screen like at 60 miles an hour. It's not, I think, a spoiler necessary to say. Like I will say, like if you really do not want any spoilers and you're graciously listen to this before you get to see the movie, please stop listening now and come back later. But even in the trailers and many of the 5 to 6 minute clips we've gotten on YouTube that they've posted, that Warner Bros. And DC have wanted us to see before going into the movie, you see where the movie really begins, which is, Superman bloodied, beaten for the first time in his life pretty much, and where we go from there. So to start where the infallible man who many consider to be the Boy Scout of the DC universe, right? Or any superhero, right? He is the kindest, most righteous individual that is blessed with or cursed with this amazing, like godlike power. And here we are with his reboot, starting with him at the very bottom. Even if he's, like you said, he's past high school, we don't get to see him necessarily in a Smallville era. Shout out Smallville, a show I have not seen, but I know many adore. I think we get bits and pieces of the Superman that people could loathe or love, going all the way back to the original Reeves, to Henry Cavill.
Christopher Reeve.
You
want to say Christopher Reeve?
Let's say Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
The Reeves. Singular Reeve.
The Reeves.
But having little bits and pieces of what's made everything, again, not only from the comic books and live action, but something I really enjoyed. You get Crypto in this movie. Crypto is someone pulled straight, at least for me. I grew up watching the Crypto animated dog series. Shout out my talking super dogs and super heroine pets and stuff like that. There's a lot of homage, I think, to the beauty of the DC strengths to me over the last 20 years, which has mostly been in animation for the things that I have seen. So I think I'll probably end my thoughts there. I'll let you finish off here if you'd like any other non-spoiler review type stuff.
Yeah, last couple things. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, and like the chemistry between the two of them as well is very, very good. I think that's one thing I would have liked is more of it. I think I agree. There's like definitely the parts when like they're on screen together, I think that just works. You can tell they're just like equals, and like they're both bringing like their A game to it, and they take the responsibility very seriously. And I think they definitely deliver that dynamic that you definitely could get a lot more of. I think this movie has so many priorities on its plate in a 2-hour runtime that it kind of like neglects that a bit. But the stuff that you do get, I think, is really good, and I hope they sort of progress more in the future. And then the last thing I'll say is that James Gunn, Warner Brothers, they definitely asked a lot out of themselves in like starting this universe. But I think in general, it opens up a lot of like possibilities for where a universe based in comic books could go if they kind of do the zanier direction of like, oh, you know, look at all this goofy stuff that's happening, and like, you know, you're already introducing the idea of other planets, and like people are like traveling very freely, and the citizenry is very used to seeing like, you know, giant monsters in the streets. It's very interesting to see where that could go in the future, because it feels like, yeah, it's a world full of like literally pulled straight out of a comic book.
Well, we have no I am Iron Man moment, right? Where we have to assume that 3 decades before all of this, we've had knowledge, or 300 years before when
where
Superman
the floodgates,
exists.
like the Iron Man movie, it's like no superhero
Open
thing
that
ever
up.
existed except for Captain America that people knew about. And then once Iron Man reveals himself, boom, Marvel Cinematic Universe is born. It goes from like a straight timeline to just MCU. This movie does not have that. It just wants to be like, no, metahumans have been on the planet for a long time. Superman's been known for quite a while, and people are just used to having heroes and villains around.
And if you are at all watching these movies to be invested in what you know will be an expanding universe, a rapidly expanding universe, and like James Gunn has said, in the TV shows, the animated shows, which is like a huge deviation from the way that, you know, anyone in Hollywood really treats animation, until these live action movies, they're all going to be connected. And I think there are parts and bits and pieces and little things we'll obviously keep for the spoiler section that I think that they're landing, and it's giving me hope, as you know, it's on the symbol right here. Like, I think that's the thing that I could probably end fully with the non-spoiler point of Superman, is being like, look, the movie does give me a lot of hope. It's not conventional hope in the way that it's like, oh, I feel good about my day-to-day life. Like, sure, it does. It has commentary on things, and we'll get to that. I think there are parts of the commentary I love. There are parts of it that I don't really think hit as well. But overall, the movie gives me a really bright feeling, and something that I can look at and understand I'm going to see it multiple times. And I'm excited to see what the future will bring us, which is something the movie had to do, in my opinion. So at the very least, if you are excited as well for the future of the DCU, I think you're really going to love this movie, and it's going to get you thinking and theorizing a lot, right? I remember the heyday of theorizing about the future of like mainly the MCU, right? When we were growing up, especially it seems like forever ago, but starting about 15 years ago, especially on YouTube, where we're now posting videos like this going forward, gave people a lot to theorize about, movie to movie, end credit scene to end credit scene, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start talking about spoilers. First thing I will say, one shout out we did not give is
Please
Tyler
do
Bowie.
Shout out Tyler Bowie.
Tyler Bowie. He's the reason that we're recording this the day after the Monday Amazon Prime member screenings. We were fortunate to get basically a free ride to the screening of the movie a few days before it comes out general public. We are not that important, but Tyler Bowie is. Yeah, Tyler Bowie is that important. So we appreciate him inviting us out and letting us kind of experience that. That was great. This is incredible.
Opening up many opportunities to us. We're very grateful to you, Tyler. I love shouting out our friends on a public sphere. No one else knows.
I mean, we have for sure. Like we want to, and we have to, especially because we're not holding these little Superman popsicle sticks without Bowie's plug, for sure.
So again, shout out Tyler Bowie. Hopefully we keep getting some of these opportunities, Chris, moving forward. But obviously, if you're a new viewer of the pod or a new listener, this is the part where I'll normally say, and we'll continue to say, we'll be back after this short break with our spoiler review and thoughts on James Gunn's Superman. And we're back with our thoughts on Superman. Full spoiler alert. Please click away if you have not seen this movie yet. I think it's definitely worth seeing without any of these spoilers coming ahead. But again, as I always do, I will throw it over to my co-host, Chris. Let's get us talking about some of the spoilers. How about we start with Clark Kent, with Superman getting his ass beat at the very beginning of this movie. We're in the gods and monsters era, as James Gunn is really pushing 3 centuries, 3 decades, 3 years, 3 months, 3 hours. We have a lot of threes and the power of threes. A lot of examples, basically, like we were talking about before, of like trying to set this universe in a lived-in state where you're like, okay, the metahumans have been around for much longer than maybe you would ever think in these type of movies and these type of universes when they're set up.
I do want to just rewind even further
Please.
to the very beginning opening logos, because I do like the logo starts with like, it's like a bright background, and it's the old like 40s comic Superman kind of like, puffing his chest out in a tiny circle, and then it flips to DC Studios. I'm a fan of we're sort of starting to pull away, it feels like, with Thunderbolts and this movie from here's all of our heroes, here's all of our IP, here's all of our past movies all in one giant splash page, and then it's like studio logo. I like that there's sort of now like variations to that where it's just like a single character, or like in the Thunderbolts case, it's a void, and the thing turns black. I like when, a movie like tonally sets up something different than just being like, hey, look at our big franchise. So I liked the way that it started there. And I guess going, into the actual thing of the movie, you get this series of like text prompts. It's like, 3 centuries, 3 decades, 3 years, 3 hours, 3 months, all that stuff. And sort of getting that basic, sort of trying to set some sort of mental image in your head about like what the world is before Superman basically just crash lands on the ground. If you've been seeing any movies or anything online, you know what this looks like. He lands in the thing, his face is bloodied, and then Krypto comes and picks him up, and then his Fortress of Solitude basically emerges out of the ground.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Really one of the cooler introductions of any of these big set piece type, I don't know, like domes or meeting places, right? Fortress of Solitude is more iconic than probably most. Yeah.
And again, this is where you establish that you're gonna skip a lot of the basic info about Superman. And I think we'll sort of debate this throughout the episode for sure, throughout the spoiler discussion. But yeah, it drops you right in. He gets his yellow sun in the Fortress of Solitude. Meanwhile, Lex's henchmen. What's the lady's name?
I don't even know. That's the one lady I didn't. Hey, shout out Spiky Lady.
Shout out Spiky.
Shout out Spiky Lady. She has
caught unprepared there.
Caught unprepared. But she has all the nanobots in her bloodstream.
Yeah. But no, she basically, one of Lex's hench people, is basically hunting for the fortress. Lex is like basically on his tail and is trying to figure out where he retreats as a base. Meanwhile, Superman is, he just got beat in battle by, a giant bot-looking thing, but there's a guy inside, as we sort of see a little later. And so basically, he's just trying to like get himself like up to 80% so he can go back into the city and start fighting again. So again, that's that whole mid-battle in progress thing, which is like, it's crazy. I mean,
it throws you in immediately. Yeah. It's probably what it feels like to fly with Superman too. Like when you're finally seeing him get healed by the yellow sun. So much is happening. You're finding out. Shout out Alan Tudyk in this. He's probably going to be in every film moving forward. But you got the Superman helpers. You got Krypto. We have Bradley Cooper.
As Jor-El, yeah.
As Jor-El. Are you kidding me? Jared leans over and he's like, "Oh my God, it's Bradley Cooper."
His little message. Yeah, his little message. But no, once he gets right back into the city, I like that he immediately gets his ass whooped. Like he's already like he gets his ass. We already know he's gotten his ass whooped when he lands on the ground of that first frame. But he goes back into the city and gets his ass whooped even more. Like you see a Superman that is immediately down on his luck from the beginning. He is given every reason again to sort of like doubt himself, because Lex has his every move. He basically controls the Ultraman, and has like different fighting moves. He has a team of young people that are like, manning these control stations and piloting the Ultraman things, like 2A, 7B sort of thing. I thought that was interesting, where it's like he's just like running the show, but he's got all these people with all these little like cameras around the Ultraman. But of course, it's being framed as like basically a giant enforcer from a nation who's like looks like, oh, they're Lex is trying to make it look like, oh, they're invading the U.S. sort of thing. And you can sort of see right there the whole like his physical superiority, his like political manipulation, which is like a bigger theme than I think we'll get into that. Like that was more prevalent than I thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah, very much.
But yeah, it just sort of like sets the world up right there. So yeah.
Well, too, when you're there, and you have to understand that Lex has probably been obsessed with Superman since he announced himself in the world, right? As Superman, what was it, 3 years prior to this to his ass whooping? So 3 years of Lex Luthor trying to figure out a way to take down his least favorite metahuman, right? And, you learn a lot about Lex Luthor's, at least in this universe, his initial, probably a bit, as the way that I read it, the more immature version of Lex Luthor, as we're getting a more immature version of Superman. Like, they're young. They're probably, like, younger millennials, right? It's a group of people who are probably feeling like, hey, we've got this one, again, like the similarities are right on the nose. Rich, bald billionaire and his acolytes and people that follow him as the future, right? As the future man. And Lex is out here acting like just like that. He's evil. Like, he's just evil the entire time. He is Lex. Like, I feel like from the limited amount of knowledge I have from the comics and from what I've seen in the animated form more than ever. Again, also shout out Jesse Eisenberg. Seeing him bald is always going to mix me up. But this version of Lex is almost pure evil. Not very many redeeming factors. It seems like the anger more than anything of this metahuman superseding him and his power and what he's amassed through his wealth and his leadership, right? Through Luthor Corp, is enough to send him over the edge. Like, he's masking it like this type of protection for humanity, but at the end of the day is really just always about Lex, and it always will be about Lex. But at least at this time, in this place, he's smart, he's cunning, he has the tools, he has a couple superpowered henchmen on his left and his right, Spiky Lady and Ultraman, and we might have to take a little sake to a side to get her actual name. But he has people to take him down, and has obviously studied him enough to be able to have everything from 1A to Z12 of moves to counter everything that Superman does. Something that he doesn't know at the moment is why he's getting his butt beat. Because if it wasn't for that, it's honestly a pretty clever way to kind of work around the whole, yeah, he is a god. He's like the god on planet Earth right now. Get him in front of a yellow sun, he'll take down anyone. But not if you have basically like the Mortal Kombat version of knowing his moveset before he even attacks you, right?
Yeah, again, I thought it was so interesting that Lex basically has Clark figured out by the time we start. Like, he's definitely been working his way up to this. And in the moment, I thought that choice was pretty cool. But now that I think about it, I kind of wish that there was more like exposition about like Lex Luthor, how he came to hate Clark so much. That's something definitely a big strength of Smallville. I mean, that's the whole. There's the first Smallville reference. Obviously, like the way that Superman and Lex are portrayed in this movie, they do not know each other until, Lex tries to start beating him up, basically. But in Smallville, they know each other from the very start. They're like friends. Lex is kind of like always iffy about Clark, that there's like something like a secret, and he kind of like slowly inches on to what's going on. But at the beginning, they're like friends because Clark saves Lex at the very beginning of the show, and he's very grateful to him for like saving his life and all this stuff, and he wants to do all these favors for him, but Clark doesn't accept it because he knows that it's kind of like a shady deal. And like Luthor Corp, they have so much influence in the community that like they, that they're sort of like he knows he wants to help him, but he knows it's like for the wrong reasons, and like all these like excessive resources and stuff. So it's very interesting going to a very like probably like flatter version where it's like very much in a comic book, and you got to open it up and it's immediate like, okay, Lex Luthor is evil. That's definitely the vibe I was sort of getting from it. I mean, for this thing, I guess it sort of works in like if you want to do like a very like action-packed focused movie. One thing I will say is that I was not bored. This movie's not boring. Whatever you think about the movie, I don't think you can say it's boring. There's something going on at like every single turn. I think the most like, I guess the slowest pace scene, if we want to like inch a little bit further in the movie, is the first scene between Clark and Lois, where basically, Clark agrees to be interviewed as Superman by Lois, and they've been dating for like they set up the context. They've been dating for like 3 months.
So many threes. The power of 3 in this film.
And so they sort of like interrogate like Superman's role in like global conflicts. Again, the global conflict is basically like, not Israel against not Palestine.
Totally not.
Like that's basically exactly what it is, which is kind of wild. So they basically, again, it is Superman's, it's kind of a debate that's sort of thrown around in like Marvel movies and even other like, Superman things. It's like, what is Superman's role in intervening in global affairs? That definitely felt like what that was there for. Very to the degree of effectiveness that is, I'm not quite sure, because I don't think it like wants to like definitely dive into it without like really like pushing that too far, because it wants to still be like funny and like hopeful and stuff. But that's kind of that sort of scene between Clark and Lois is where they kind of, Superman establishes himself as someone who's very stubborn in I want to use my power to protect people, like, no matter what. He doesn't really think about too much of the consequences because he doesn't see himself as like a servant of like the United States as much of like he's just a servant for like humanity.
He just wants to see people not die.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and to honestly, like, it's kind of double folded. That first scene between Lois and Clark, it's like the first time you really get to see them interact with each other as like a couple, right? It's when you see them for the first time, they're coworkers. They're able to kind of like spree it off, probably thinking that no one, obviously Jimmy knows, other folks along the way kind of pick up on those two's chemistry with each other. But for our first scene, like for them to have like their chemistry be something a bit more along the lines of like their first fight is interesting, and to happen in a way where you're like, okay, we're not going to sideline Lois Lane's greatest qualities as one of the best journalists in an ideal world, right? Like someone who like asks the hard-hitting facts no matter what her connection is to the subject at hand. And it is kind of funny too that even before then, what leads to it is basically talking about how Clark has been getting these crazy interviews from Superman himself, and it's like, how could you ever get them in the same room together, type of stuff. So it's a little meta, it's a little bit on the nose again. The comedy is pretty good there, but then it gets serious, and then Lois gets maybe unintentionally gets underneath Clark's skin a bit, and he storms off. You learn later in the movie too, it's kind of like her plan was to break up with him at that moment too, before they had this interview and he kind of stormed out and they had their fight together.
Yeah, I think that's just because Lois, the way her character works is that she's very into, besides the definitely the dubious ethics of dating like your most valuable interview subject, she tries to treat it as best she can as like objectively, like what it would be like to interview Superman. And so I think that's kind of the conflict in their relationship, is that she's trying to like journalistically do the best that she can with like the information that is provided on the record, which I thought was cool for Lois.
You're supposed to say off the record before you say the thing that you want to be off the record, Clark. And it's a little bits and pieces like that it's like, oh yeah, we have we got a dude from the Midwest. We got a dude who grew up in in Smallville, bro, like versus Lois Lane, who I'm not entirely positive on her full background, but I have to imagine she's a bit more of a city gal, obviously chasing her journalistic dreams. So those two together are always going to have that kind of difference in growing up, and their difference in their values and stuff, and you saw it come to a head there. I kind of want to jump into what you think about Krypto then a little bit, because we do get him from the very beginning. There are scenes with Soup and Soup's himself and Krypto fighting at the very beginning, but obviously a lot of them are Krypto jumping over my boy when he's broken and not. Does the dog work for you?
I think in the moment it's cool. It kind of becomes a little one note for me, if I'm to be honest. Like now that I'm thinking, I've never really thought too much about Krypto since we came out of the movie. But he just kind of, it's the same type of shtick for me. It's just like he comes in and like he's very unruly. He's there
untrained.
He's there for a little roughhousing. You figure out whose dog he is later. I mean, we're in full spoiler section, so I mean, it's Supergirl's dog, but. Which was a fun scene, I will say. That's very fun when she's basically just like partying on red sun planets, and then she enjoys like, playing with the dog and like getting like smashed on the ground, which is crazy. But I think in general, I was just kind of like pretty neutral on Krypto. Yeah. It was cool that he was there. It's like a change from all the other iterations of Superman that doesn't have a dog to hang out with.
Yeah.
I think kind of like definitely is points for like, general like goofy zany factor. To have a superpowered dog, but I just thought, I'm pretty neutral on that, honestly.
It plays into the power of having it kind of be like the most comic book iteration that we've probably gotten of Superman, right? It's just like flipping a page, and you've got all the super pets, you've got all the super people, you've got the Hall of Justice, everyone's put together. What I was surprised is that he would be a part of this story so early, like in the DCU. Again, like my only knowledge is if someone in the comments below could ID the Krypto animated show that was airing in the early 2010s or late 2000s. I just have like such a seared in memory of watching the CW growing up, or what is now the CW. It was probably 4Kids TV before, and just loving that. But the power of that was that Krypto could talk with like Bat Dog and Wonder Woman's pet and like all of these other things, and that was like the whole thing. I think we got like a Kevin Hart version of that, Kevin Hart and The Rock, where like it was like the modern day animated. It's way worse. I've heard about it, but there's like an animated version. There's like a movie that came out a few years ago with all the super pets. And then
you're right. It might be like DC League of Super Pets or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually the title, but I do remember seeing that thing. And like, definitely Kevin Hart's in it. I never saw it. But
and that's the other thing, is that you got to like look at Krypto as like kind of a CG. Like you have to accept that this is always going to be a CG dog, like for the most part, because regular dogs can't do that, and you have to be able to like weave that in
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But shout out Crypto. When I was able to surmise from why James Gunn even included Crypto really in the story to begin with was because of the relationship he had with his dog through COVID. I think an adoptee. Like, yeah, we're going to toss the dog in here. We're going to get Crypto in here. But I think it's a welcome thing. I do agree with you a bit. It was a bit tired at the end, especially when Crypto starts really messing with my boy, Mr. Terrific's balls, dude, which is a crazy sentence, but shout out Mr. Terrific.
But no, I think it's a good time to talk about Mr. Terrific, played by Eddie Gathegi, I'm going to say. I apologize if the pronunciation is not quite right, but what I remember him from is Darwin from X-Men First Class.
Oh, that's crazy.
One of the first characters to die in that movie, unfortunately. But I remember him being very good in that movie, and so when I saw him on the list for Mr. Terrific, I was like, oh, he's probably going to put in a pretty good performance, and he's like definitely like the standout of the movie. If this movie was not a Superman movie, it might be a Mr. Terrific movie. Honestly, he gets to do a lot. His humor is very dry. He takes things very seriously, but also, again, all the funny moments and even like the very James Gunn music montage, like I'm just gonna kill everyone scene happens with him about midway through. Yeah, I just thought he was great. I mean, he's got all these cool gadgets, the T-spheres. Yeah.
Love the T-spheres.
Yeah.
Circles are not a 3D object. Talk to me about T-spheres, Lois. I do kind of like her interaction, too, with the Justice Gang as well. Maybe we could open up a wider conversation about Justice Gang after this. But I got to throw my plaudits towards Mr. Terrific as well. I think he was probably my standout, underrated performance of the entire film. Mr. Terrific has got me locked in as one of his biggest fans now. Not again, like I'm walking in with not even any knowledge of the Arrowverse, really, other than watching occasionally with multiple Chris's, fans of the good and the bad parts of the show. But the Justice Gang, Chris, not only includes Mr. Terrific, but we got Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion. Come on, one of our favorites. Shout out, I was going to say Chuck. What is his show? Castle. Shout out Castle.
Firefly.
Shout out Firefly.
Firefly Serenity, which is the movie. But Nathan Fillion's been in just like so many random things. He does lots of cameos. He's got, in the Suicide Squad, he plays a thing and he dies.
R.I.P.
Yeah, and there's just so many. I mean, I think he's got cameos in the Guardians movies too. I think they're just him and James Gunn are just homies.
Yeah.
But he definitely gets a lot to do in this movie because he gets to play an asshole Green Lantern. With
the asshole.
Yeah. And so he definitely gets the most attention. He sees himself as like the leader of their 3-person group. And I thought he was very good. I will say I do like Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, but Hawkgirl doesn't get a lot to do in this movie.
Very little.
She's she like yells at people and sometimes hits people with the little mace thing or whatever that weapon is. But in terms
screeches.
of like in screeches,
the screech is crazy.
The screeches, yeah, that's like
Very
her biggest
unexpected.
contribution is that she's not really in it too much, which I was kind of like, okay, like it was a little bit of what is she doing here? What's kind of like her role in this bigger thing? Felt like just kind of a person to fill out the team. But yeah, those are the 3 heroes that you sort of like start out with. And they have a big Hall of Justice, which I thought was interesting.
Hall of Justice thrown in when you don't even have more than 3 and maybe an unofficial 4th member with Superman, as you find out that they're all kind of homies. Like they do know each other. They all know that he's Clark Kent, which is crazy to me. Again, part of the power of the lived-in universe and something that the movie does really well. It's interesting though that they're not really willing to kind of jump to really protect him or save him. And it seems kind of a bit more of an indication on the character of what is maybe eventually going to become the Justice League. But Chris, I'm sure it'll come eventually. But to start with the Justice Gang, have it be kind of like that to be the meme, that to be the James Gunn like reoccurring joke throughout the film, landed for me enough. And then at the very end, when you get Metamorpho, shout out Anthony Kerrigan, who's in this as well. Did he play a version of Lex Luthor at all? No. I
don't think so.
He's just bald.
No, he's just bald. He
Shout
plays
out.
NoHo Hank and Barry. That's the thing that I've seen him. Seen him in.
Well, he kills it as Metamorpho.
That's an interesting character to me. This kind of goes into my like neutral things. I do like Anthony Kerrigan, but I'm not sure that like the way he's introduced. Again, that's another thing too about like the sort of lack of exposition. The fact that he can grow kryptonite on his hand was interesting, but again, that's another thing that sort of relies on you knowing that he is, kryptonite makes him vulnerable. I'm sure a lot of people know that, but again, it's one of those exposition things that sort of like breezes by. And again, I didn't mind that, but I could see a general viewer being like, especially if you're a kid. If you're a kid and this is your first interaction to Superman, you're missing out on a lot of different stuff. like Metamorpho and like his ability to do kryptonite is one of those like small things where it's like, oh, kryptonite, that just grows on his hand. It's not like a naturally occurring thing that comes from his home planet.
Seriously.
But yeah, Metamorpho, again, the performance I think is pretty decent. The character himself,
little tentacly,
I
little
wasn't
weird.
quite sure about him. Yeah.
Baby Joey. Look at Baby Joey's
Get the
weird.
little baby.
Yeah, I hope Baby Joey gets a nice long life, because he was saved from a black hole and many other probably worse traumatic things from the hands of Lex Luthor. But Baby Joey, I just remember, shout out the Kind of Funny podcast. If y'all are watching, love the pod. But I'd be watching every weekend, and whenever those things drop, and they just talked about how when there was a Baby Joey action figure dropped, you got pictures of Baby Joey, and then everyone's like, "What the hell is Baby Joey?" This seems like a very James Gunn type thing to throw into the film. But again, probably feeds in a bit more to that kind of like middle sequence when they're in the Phantom-esque zone. It's not the Phantom Zone, but it's a pocket dimension.
Well, yeah,
right?
the pocket. That's another
They're
part
all
of this, like,
captured, all the old exes, all the old political adversaries, the metahumans he doesn't like, everyone in between are all held in this pocket dimension.
Well, yeah, that's the whole like Lex Luthor, like his whole like influence on the world sort of thing. Like he, all adversaries, agitators, even people that like just look at him the wrong way, he just sends into the pocket dimension. And
crazy,
which is wild. And then like, you get that one scene where there's a guy at the beginning of the movie that tries to assist Superman. They do facial scanning on him. They bring him to the dimension, and they kill him right in front of Superman, which was like, I mean, it's a very it's a very reckless move on his part, because it's sort of like also motivates Metamorpho to like free him from the kryptonite thing.
Yep.
But I did like how they used the sun in this, because like, yeah, even though like he's, in that scene where they, he's still kind of like getting all crusty on the ground, and then he like, removes the kryptonite hand. He still has to like create a light source so that he can like.
The poison is deep within his blood at that point.
Yeah. Well, it's just there's just been so much exposure. But I did like the fact that they really emphasized the sun, and like it felt like he needed more time to heal. I thought that was cool. It was just like, oh yeah, he's at 80%.
Yeah.
He doesn't like immediately go to like 100%. He has to like rest. There's multiple times where he gets like really down, and he has to like, take refuge somewhere, or like rest, or just hang out in the sun. I like that. That gave it that kind of limited his power a little bit more. Which, now thinking about it, just sort of as we're talking, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed they power scaled him from the very beginning. He's not like completely invulnerable. He feels like a guy who is like very strong, but not in like an automatic winner in every scenario.
Well, too, and like that in particular scene is probably the coolest thing Metamorpho does the entire film, which is literally create a sun. Like a little bit of a sun, enough to get Superman powered up, enough to go save his kid and get them all out of there in time. Probably one of the things I could do without, now that we're talking about that scene in particular, the last thing I'll say about it is that I don't really love kind of the tertiary characters sometimes in this movie. Again, I think it's kind of a James Gunn special. We got to know what the third or fourth person surrounding them is thinking, even though if there's regular Joe Blows, like the two guys on both the gal and the dude on both sides of Metamorpho and Superman as he's creating the sun, are just immediately narking on them. And I'm just like, is this the most believable thing? It feels like a kind of a zany comic book type moment, but it didn't really work for me. I'm kind of like, just let the moment sit, and I want this to be something I can get a bit more like intrigued on, and maybe even a little emotional. But I felt like just them bickering on the sides of them kind of killed that for me. And again, it's like that is, I think, evident of some of the things I didn't like about the movie.
I'm glad you mentioned the sort of NPCs.
Oh, so many NPCs.
Because I go back and forth on one hand, it's funny that when like people react to a giant monster in the streets, just looking up, just filming it on their phones, or eating yogurt inside the laundromat, and just being like, you know what, if it's my time, it's my time. But like, it just, everyone felt very just like, very disposable. They didn't like really talk to Superman that much. And like, even when like there's that one of the big like plot developments in the movie is that, Lex finishes Jor-El's message and basically like says to everyone that like, oh, we put you on this planet to conquer it and be like the leader and like rule it. And obviously we learned that is not fake. That was not doctored. It was a real thing that he said, because no one ever disputes it. But immediately, like, they go from like sort of like being like, Superman, are you okay? And then he walks away and people just start throwing stuff at him. Like it was very like it felt like all the people like in the city were like devoid of all critical thinking, which was wild.
Like someone clicked a switch, like if you're playing Sims, and they all turned on him. And that was part of the film that was my least favorite, because I'm just like, none of this is believable to me, even if you look at it through the lens of like a comic book movie.
Because like, you know, even if you're, you know, someone like that's on social media a lot of the time, but like, which is funny, the whole like monkey bot thing. Where
that was pretty good.
They're calling
I'm a fan of the monkey bot.
I thought that was funny.
Hashtag super shit.
But it's just like, you know, you have like 3 years of evidence that Superman wants nothing but the best for you. And like, just because there's like a message up there, like his father said, it's like, well, his father's not around. You know, if he would have conquered, you know, I would think people in that city would use more critical thinking, being like, you know, if Superman wanted to kill us and, you know, take us hostage as a ruler, he would have done it already. Yeah. You know?
Are we really going to trust the bald man that always spends his time up on the 40th floor of his big old tower with his name on it? Nah, I'm not trusting that dude. Yeah. It's actually crazy that Lex Luthor spends about 85% of this movie up in the little movable kind of like home base that they have, Sky towering over Metropolis.
Yeah.
Why would you trust him?
This is where the sort of the tonal clash between trying to stuff a comic book, a Saturday morning cartoon, and real life into one movie is that just the people, the townspeople, the citizenry, that works in a comic book because you don't have to show them, you don't have to really do, you know, like you get the little splash pages and then you move on. But like when you see the real people like moving around and like reacting in real time to what's happening, and then they see this stuff on the screen, it just makes it feel like, oh, okay, like we're playing The Sims or something like that. It's you know, you are the main character and everyone else around is going, yeah. So I, again, like the more I think about it, it's funny for a little bit, and then I could see that on a second rewatch, like being a little bit sour for me, being just like, you know, you could have given the people a little more like, you know, Superman can talk to the people. He's obviously a very friendly guy. It would have been cool to see like a conversation between him and like just some regular citizen about something. I think that's the problem with being driven right into the middle of conflict, is that Superman is basically always on the back foot and is dealing with the next thing that's happening, and he never has time to like interact with the world. So the world building definitely suffers in that we don't know what the people in the city are like. The city doesn't have a lot of personality to it. Yeah. It's just stuff happens and he has to react to it.
We'll say like the biggest personality moment you get from any of the NPC type characters is, again, the dude who's running the food stand on the side of the road that helps Superman up, who's like, well, yeah, I got you a hot dog last week, or it was something along those lines. And I was like, those are the moments that I'd like to see far more of. Just Superman being a dude, just being an absolute Chad on the streets, just like chatting with the folks that are just living day-to-day life, and like understand he is who he is. He is this alien figure. We know this now, but kind of a symbol for good and hope, even if we don't even know if people fully understand like what the S means, or like, you know, the whole background of his family beyond understanding now that his parents had sent him here, quote unquote, to conquer, from what the movie is trying to tell us. But the little character moments where, you know, you see him dying, like you see the one guy that he had a real ass conversation with get shot in the head, Russian roulette style, one of the best scenes in the entire film, and it's the most gruesome scene. I actually, like, it got me gasping. I didn't think a movie like this could get me like actually shocked in a way where I had like, I looked over to Jared, I'm like, whoa, all right, they're doing this. Lex is shooting dudes like in the pocket dimension, so he can't be held accountable fully for it, but obviously he gets his comeuppance at the end. Really enjoy when Superman was able to do that. Now, also in the same vein, Superman getting a chance to save kids, squirrels, grown women, grown men. Like even the scene where he's outside of the big monster kaiju battle at the beginning, when he finally gets his way out of the pocket dimension, saves that lady who's about to get crushed by Lex Luthor's incompetence in the pocket dimension going, and she looks behind and just like a little tear. And that is like what we need. We don't need this whole God complex thing that we got out of the Zack Snyder Man of Steel movie. It's something more akin to like genuine appreciation that this superpowered being chose to save you. And it's something that probably makes Superman as a character as popular as he's been over these years. But even that final shot of him coming out of the dust is like my top 3 shots of the entire film.
No, there are some shots where it's like, oh, okay, that's what we were looking for. We're looking for Superman emerging from the rubble and just being like, yeah, here he is, kind of towering over everyone. I think that was cool. In a way where it's like, it's a cool scene where it's not like a super like, you know, godlike coded, like, you know, Messiah coded thing where like they do it in Batman v Superman, where it's like this very moody lighting and everyone's like reaching out and touching Superman on the shoulder and stuff and like looking at him as like a god.
Very dark, just no lighting.
But no, that's like the most positive aspect I could say about Superman, is that he he demonstrates repeatedly that he wants to save everyone. If someone is in his view, he will want to save them. And yeah, again, from like the lady in the car, single lady in the car, being like the building is coming down, like, oh, okay, like get out of here, and then I'll put the building down. Or like, again, the squirrel. I thought that was very cool. Again, he's just great. It just tells you he's very interested in like in just saving people. I think that was the biggest positive of the character. And also, he's just a quirky guy.
He's a quirky dude.
Goofy guy. So he's like, golly gee, you know, I'm a jerk
sometimes.
I'm a real jerk sometimes. Yeah, I like he's just like woe is me. Like he's like a, kind of an oversized child, but like in a good way. I think that was definitely the biggest positive
like
of the
this movie isn't even like just tonally bright, right? Like I think again, when you get Superman on screen, he is not woe is me. He is not complaining about the power he has been cursed with, and inevitably the chaos that would reign from it. He is looking at it as like it's an opportunity. Shout out the bear. He's creating opportunity for himself to just go out. Yeah, that's a crazy one. He's creating opportunity for himself to go out there, and again, like the way that he was raised by his parents in Smallville to where he is in the big city, like he's still going to have those old country type ideals about, you know, at least especially in this universe, care for your neighbor and, you know, use your power for good. Understand that you are more powerful than everyone. That shouldn't lead to you conquering or feeling like you have to do something that leads to like a power struggle. Like you can do this for good and you can still remain yourself. I've thrown a lot of criticism James Gunn's way throughout this review about, you know, especially his writing style. And even then, like, I don't even really hate most of it. I just think there are some key moments he doesn't really land. What he does land spectacularly in this movie is not only maintaining a bright tonal type direction with Superman and Clark Kent in this universe, but the movie is bright. Every time you're not in the pocket dimension, which is dominated by the darkest dude in this film, Lex Luthor, whenever Superman is on screen, you're looking at the sun, you're looking at hope, you're looking at someone who is going to shine a light on your darkness. And again, if it's an indicative on the NPCs of this universe just being so like comic booky NPCs that they can't think for themselves unless they're an established character in canon, then whatever. But when I'm watching this movie, it's a treat on the eyes. Like I'm loving the way that they're actually mixing in the CGI in this film. You know, again, Baby Joey CGI there's a little weird. Like Metamorpho can be a bit better. Crypto can sometimes be a hit or miss in terms of the CGI, but a lot of the action in this movie, which is a majority of the film, like you talked about at the beginning, Chris, it hits for me. Like it's an action-packed film that, like, if you're gonna watch a superhero movie just to see some dope action, you're getting that end to end in this movie. And anytime Metropolis is on the edge of just like complete and utter destruction, you're getting Superman doing everything from heat vision, which was so sick, getting to find Ultraman in like a Shea Stadium knockoff, to even like his first couple battles with the kaijus just getting tossed around the city, saving people, not himself, is entirely what this character should be about in the new DCU that James Gunn is trying to build.
In addition to the fight scenes, I did like the flight. I think we talked a little bit afterward about the sort of the flying style. You know, when he's, for the most part, when he's flying up in the air, it's like the camera is like right in front of his face. Mm-hmm. And it's like tracking him and following him as he sort of like takes off and flies through elements. I thought that was a cool part of it when he's like, you know, you can tell he's flying at super speed because, whoa, a leaf just landed on me.
Shout out the leaf.
That's crazy.
We're doing it live.
Not only, the one thing I'll say about that leaf landing and also just being an outside in general is right now I can smell barbecue or something like that.
All different kinds of smells.
It smells really good out here. I don't know where it's coming from, but you don't get this experience inside.
Hey, if you see it on the pod, drop some barbecue off next time.
I want you to put like a little clip art of a chicken.
Oh yeah, right here.
Somewhere.
Right here.
Yeah, right in your
hand.
Or
right there. Right on the table.
Edit Herald. But no, I think the flight style was very cool when he sort of like flies through different elements very fast because he goes through like snow and clouds and sun and all this other stuff. I thought that was very cool. And even like there's this one scene where you could tell he's trying to like get back to the fortress like really fast, basically like when he learns that the fortress has been like ransacked very early on in the movie. You know, he's sort of flying, and then also too like the camera like kind of, you know, jerks off to his like his right side of his body.
Yeah.
And it definitely
moving faster than the camera
felt like
can move.
It felt like he was moving faster.
Yeah.
I did like that camera trick where it's like, oh, like the camera's struggling to keep up with how fast he's flying. I thought that was a very cool way to like give it some personality to it, and it's definitely a way of flying that we have not seen in Superman before, which is cool.
And it looks realistic enough too, to the point where it's like, yeah, I can actually say I love the way that they filmed and chose to film his flying, which has got to be one of the most important things about Superman. Like, so many people in this film fly. I mean, you know, Hawkgirl at a certain point picks up the dictator type figure. says, I'm not Superman, I'm gonna drop you. There's nothing intriguing about her flight. There's nothing intriguing about any of the people from the Justice Gang, because I'm pretty sure they all have ways to do that. But yeah, if you can make Superman's way of doing that and flying and filming it moving forward very unique, just keep rolling with it. But I do want to say real quick, I'm going to ask about your thoughts on Clark's parents. Probably the most, I think it would be a disservice to call them NPCs, but they're definitely not actors that you would be able to tell from the get-go, and they're not so important in the story that you can't, take a step back and appreciate how that did feel at Smallville. And I actually really love that. I loved his parents in this movie. Chris, what were your thoughts?
Okay, that's interesting. 'Cause, yeah, now I'm getting up on my chair.
Let's
so
do
this
it.
is something where I am, again, mixed on it, because they only really interact with Clark like once or twice. And the first time he interacts with him as Clark, basically he's like, oh, like, we read your article or whatever they say. It's like, oh, I don't really have a lot of time for this. Like, love you, bye. And then obviously when he's injured and then he has to go back to Smallville, and they have that little conversation where it's like, Jor-El is like, just because Jor-El said that doesn't mean that's who you are or whatever. Like, obviously the Kents raised him to be a good man. The mom is very just like, hey, the dad's all sentimental and all that stuff.
He's a big old wash bucket.
Big old softy. But I think that's the one thing I just wish we would have gotten a little bit more in, like, maybe more of an origin story, or just a little bit more beefier conversation between him and the parents. I mean, it is one thing that is like, it does happen in all the other movies, but I will say the big difference between this Jonathan Kent and all the other Jonathan Kents that I can think of is that he is alive when Clark is like 30.
Yeah.
Because in the original Superman, Jonathan dies of a heart attack when Clark is a teenager. And then in Smallville, after Jonathan wins a Senate election against Lex Luthor, he dies of a heart attack. In Man of Steel, I believe Kevin Costner he dies in like a tornado accident.
Don't save me.
Yeah. He basically tells him like not to save him, which is wild. Yeah, so basically between those three, like Jonathan Kent, like at least in two of the three, the Man of Steel, I mean, I guess also, but like in those scenes where he dies, Superman comes to like the realization that like just because he's so powerful doesn't mean that he has the power to save like his dad. I think that's a big thing that especially like Clark in Smallville learns many times. Just because he has all these abilities in the world doesn't mean that he can stop people that he loves from dying. And I think that's not a lesson that he learns in this movie. Basically, everyone he tries to save, he saves. Like that's the one thing about like the whole like saving a squirrel, saving people. He doesn't fail to save anyone. Anyone that he basically sets his mind out to save, he saves.
Well, the only person who dies is the food cart owner.
Is the food court
that steps up to try to help him up.
Yeah, exactly.
At the moment of truth.
But that's not as like not as impactful as someone who he actually like speaks to. It's still like a pretty effed up scene.
Seriously.
And it like definitely kind of calls Metamorpho more into action than Superman. Being like, okay, like we need to, that was pretty effed up. That was weird. But that's the one thing is that I just think that there's some important character development. And like, I think the other thing too, which is sort of thinking out loud, is that assuming that your audience knows what Superman's life was like before you see him, even though you get a little text blurbs, is like, I think that's kind of a false premise in just that, like, I feel like you need to have something where you see this version of Superman. He grew up in a world where, his parents lived to when, he went to the Daily Planet, went off to college and all this stuff. He left and they were still there and they're still just hanging out and they're like tracking his life. But like the whole like metahumans exist on this universe and they've been around for a long time and people know about them. What was the impact on his life then? It's like there's a lot of things that like James Gunn is asking the audience to take for granted. Some people don't even know they're taking it for granted. They don't know what they're taking for granted because they're not familiar with the story. But even so, like there's a lot of stuff that probably contributes to the character development of Superman that we do not see in this movie. He already comes out. He's already out the other side and is very secure on his morals and like what he wants to do with his power. And I think that's something that you sort of miss out on this movie that I wish we saw more of. And I think the interaction between like Jonathan and Martha and Clark, I think all feed into that because we don't know what kind of people they are. They're obviously very pleasant and nice people and very reassuring for that one interaction. Yeah. But that Jonathan Kent is a very like he's kind of more of a rounder Jonathan Kent than like the other ones that we've seen. I don't know how active that guy is.
No.
Very, very truncated. So and he also doesn't have apparently as bad of heart problems as other Jonathan Kents have, because 2 of them die in heart attacks.
Yeah.
So what is that relationship like? We don't know, and I think that's kind of a big gap for me.
I think it leaves, because I agree with you. I would like to have gotten a bit more about the background of his hometown. I think, again, it kind of plays into the factor that we don't get a lot of Clark Kent in this movie at all. No. I'm a bit bummed about that, and I think you stole the words right out of my mouth. I do really love the scene between Jonathan and Clark, but other than that, I can't imagine any of these other parent-type scenes really hitting us hard. I mean, fast forward to the very end of the film when you think, he's getting his yellow sun, it's a healthy dosage of yellow sun to heal up, and instead of seeing his original Kryptonian parents, the parents that he wants thrown up to soothe him are his Earth parents, the parents who, after everything that went down, like, he actually considers to be him. So I almost wonder if that's kind of like, I don't want to give James Gunn or the team like too much credit to be like this was on purpose, but it seemed like maybe it's just setting up for another storyline in the second film, which, kind of want to bring this conversation a bit to a wrap, but
I do want to say one more thing.
Yeah, please.
The Daily Planet also too was a bit of like a lack of interaction. Clark has one scene where he interacts with the people at the Daily Planet
at the very beginning of the movie.
The very beginning of the movie, where he's like, "Hey, what's up, Jimmy?" I did like, side note, I did like that Jimmy was basically the Rizzler.
Dude, he's the Rizzler.
People are just attracted to him, and he doesn't really try that hard.
Is he going to get a canonical superpower? Like, is that something that we don't know about from the comics?
I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. I've just seen other Jimmys in other things, and they're just kind of like photographer people. I don't quite remember.
The ladies love him.
But it doesn't matter, because he already has the superpower of charisma, apparently. And he just doesn't, it's funny because he just doesn't know. I mean, I think he knows, but it's just like he has more charisma than he thinks, or he's more attractive than he realizes. Yeah. And he's just like, why are they? It's like, it's cool, they're all obsessed with me, but, and I think that was like my favorite like side character. But the thing is, again, Clark doesn't interact with these people. That's
supposed to be his best friend.
Yeah.
Like, thankfully, we do get, like, the one character that he interacts with the most of the secondary and tertiary characters is Lois, which is probably the one you have to land.
But again, that's not a secondary, tertiary character. That's like...
That's a primary character.
Lead. That's a lead that sort of is sidelined for, like, big parts of this movie, which I think is, again, probably one of the bigger flaws of the movie, that they don't explore that much. But, like, the Daily Planet stuff feels like they're kind of in their own world. Which again, I think in a movie, that's why it leans more towards DC Universe intro than Superman movie. The more that I think about it, is that again, it's kind of the double-edged sword of this movie. It's like, it introduces a lot and builds up a lot of the world, but at the expense of Superman's development himself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think from the very beginning, at least, it seemed like that was the intention. Yeah. Like, you throw up the S and you throw up everything you need to throw up without it saying Superman straight up. Like, you can get an idea of it.
I agree. I think that was James Gunn. Like, he's already been on record. He's saying he has no interest in repeating the origins of Clark Kent, which I think I understand, but I think that's also to the movie's detriment. I think people want it. I think this Superman's interesting. He's more charismatic. He's more hopeful. I like to see a little bit more of that. Why he thinks that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and hopefully, don't have to wait till like a 2029 to get the second Superman movie. I mean, we never got a second Man of Steel. Not that I think we would have liked it very much, but who knows? That never came to fruition. I hope going forward that you get a more character-centric study on Clark Kent as a person, or it's just something that's more Superman. Again, the benefits of a comic book movie being like so pulled out of the comics that there's so many characters on screen, all kind of like interacting with each other across different issues and different like runs in the comic series that they're going in, the reboots that even they have. Like, is it gonna translate well to the big screen, where maybe I do want to see a bit more about how Superman grew up, or how Superman interacts with his best friend Jimmy Olsen, who is literally dead in the first whatever minutes, or was it even a deleted scene of the Man of Steel? Right, he didn't even get any shine. Like,
I think it's like in the Ultimate Edition.
Oh, it's terrible.
I think in the director's cut he dies. I don't think I'm not sure they mentioned it in the theatrical cut. Obviously, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's from my memory. I was like, but no, either way, Jimmy Olsen dies very unceremoniously in those movies.
We do get, very randomly, a Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr. in this, which
Yeah,
is
that's
very
wild.
interesting.
That's wild.
It's like,
he's MCU and DCU. Also, Wendell Pierce is Perry White.
Oh,
he's in Thunderbolts.
Come on.
In May, and then 2 months later, he's Perry White in this movie. So
Shout out Bunk, baby.
Shout out that dude. Yeah, from The Wire,
Shout
right?
out The Wire.
Yeah, we got some Wire appearances for sure. But it's cool that he's in both those movies. I think that's very cool.
And he plays the characters well. Wendell Pierce is great in this. I mean, like there are certain, again, like standout performances for individuals who are on the screen for 5 minutes or less in this movie that are not NPCs, right?
Yeah.
But we get to the end of the film. It's not even really a huge indication of like James Gunn being like, okay, here's 5 end credit scenes. Technically our end credit scene is seeing Supergirl and Krypto reunite at the very end of the film, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, so that's kind of great scene, but they're not even using that as like a post credit, which is honestly pretty sick. I appreciated that. Didn't make me wait through the credits to see something that was like actually important to the plot.
That was a big pro for me, is that the post-credit scenes are just kind of like tiny little asides to the movie, and they're not like a tease. I mean, kind of the entire movie is a tease to the DCU, so they didn't really need. I'm glad James Gunn didn't feel the need to like keep doing tiny teases for stuff. It was just kind of like, hey, here's Superman being a guy. I like being a jerk. I like that.
G golly.
I will say it's interesting because James Gunn and Ryan Coogler, both Marvel alums, and Ryan Coogler is obviously still working in the MCU with he's going to do Black Panther 3. But it's interesting the approaches because they've been indoctrinated in the Marvel post-credit scene world. And Sinners, the way that Ryan Coogler uses post-credit scenes is like an epilogue to the movie. Like they are like necessary like addendums to the end of the movie. When you see like the main character, Miles Caton's character in old age, and like the vampire, Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld returning and being like, we can give you your life, we can extend it. Haley B. Steinfeld, of course. But that scene where like the post-credit scenes are necessary, and then in this movie the post-credit scenes are just kind of like nice things. They're not like teasing anything. Neither one teases a movie to come, but they're just like they use them in their own ways, which is nice. And I think it's sort of very fitting for like two directors who have had the most success in terms of like exerting their personalities into Marvel movies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for James Gunn to see that as a strength, I think, and being like, oh yeah, we have Superman. David Cornsweet is this man, is this dude. And if we're just going to put him in just like situations where we couldn't fill out his personality as much in the plot, then let's just show him chilling with his stepdog, with his uncle and the dog just chilling on the moon, where they both can just chill out and be alone, or just be thinking he's being a jerk, which he was a little bit to his homie that put together literally an entire city back together. I can be such a jerk sometimes. The fourth mention of that. But they're two of my favorite post-credit scenes from any of the superhero movies we've ever seen, because they don't have stakes and they're just character moments. And David plays Superman so well, that I can get behind that. I'm not walking away feeling disappointed, right? I'd feel far more disappointed in something like the end of like, a Brave New World, where just like, okay, this sucks. This isn't in character. You're not getting us anything. You're trying to just force it in. But what at the end of Superman, it doesn't feel forced, and leaves me excited for like, again, this lived-in universe and the benefits of it. For all like the negatives, I think the benefits still lie in like, hey, I'm looking forward to the next film. It's going to be Supergirl, I believe. We've got shows coming out. The Clayface project is going to be coming out in the next couple years. DCU is probably set up for success if they can make each of these projects distinctly their own, but find a way to weave them all together at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think we've definitely been like taking turns being quite critical of this movie. I know I have sort of in the past like 20 minutes. But I do think in general, like when in the moment when I was watching, I was like, I really enjoy this. It's just sort of like after the fact where we're like, okay, like that could have been better. That could have been better. But in terms of like a jumping off point where like different things can happen, I'm really excited for Peacemaker season 2.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. John Cena's got a cameo in this.
He got a cameo,
which was fun.
He's got bigger muscles than him.
Yeah,
he's bigger.
He's super jacked.
Super jacked.
But no, I am excited for like, I hope that James Gunn takes the universe in a more like the comic booky direction. I think that makes it different from the MCU, is that if it's going to be a little more wild and wacky, and it's going to like build out its universe over live action and animation, TV and movies. I'm just interested to see like him, hopefully he gets the ability to sort of see it all through, because he definitely has made a lot of like great stuff. There's some things like Guardians 2 I don't like at all, where his style really doesn't work. But in general, he puts like his personal like stamp on it. And you definitely, that's probably my last thing I'll say. If you like James Gunn's personal style, no matter what, if you like all those Guardians movies, if you like Peacemaker, if you like the Suicide Squad, which I really do like the Suicide Squad, you're gonna love this movie. If you're kind of off and on it, or you're just not a fan, you probably won't like it.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. But me personally, I think that the way that Gunn kind of employs style most of the time, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. Yeah.
No, I would echo the same sentiments. Like if I were to, I'm not going to rank them in any particular order, but I do really like Guardians 1. I like Guardians 3, a little less than Guardians 1. And again, same as you, like Suicide Squad. I think this might be my favorite of his movies.
Really? Okay,
really.
so
I thought
better
about
than,
it a bit.
Okay, that's interesting.
So if we are going to rank one, I think I'm putting Superman 1.
I still put Guardians 1, number 1, 5 stars.
Okay, 5 stars. You heard it here.
I think Guardians 1, I am a big fan of the Suicide Squad. It even popped even more for me because I watched it on my TV, didn't watch it in theaters, and I still really liked it. And then probably this third.
Okay.
I definitely put it over the 2 Guardians movies, 2 and 3. But I'd say definitely Guardians 1, the Suicide Squad, and then Superman. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this probably leaves us for our first time that we're doing this on YouTube, but Chris, throw us with what your final score out of 5 is going to end up being for you.
So yeah, I was teetering between a 4 and a 4.5. I think I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's a very solid entry, and there's a lot of it I respect. Again, the return of Superman to a hopeful character in a world where he could be very cynical, versus like the sort of forced cynicism of Henry Cavill's Superman in that Snyderverse in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Those movies are just so dour for no reason. But I like that, again, Superman in this world, David Cornsweet plays an optimistic Superman in a world that gives him every reason to be cynical. Lex Luthor feels like he's got the whole like world in his pocket. He's shaping public opinion. He wants half a country for himself, Luthoria. He stole his pet. He had him crashing out on live tap. Yep. Yeah, he puts him in a little, like, basically a hamster, little Skinner box. And, all that stuff, while it sort of upsets him, it doesn't deter him from, like, doing the right thing and saving people and, like, seeing, like, hope for the world, even though there's lots of reasons for him to not be hopeful. So I think that was a great thing to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am going to settle where I also said walking out of the film felt this way. Very strong 4 cryptos out of 5 bald Luthors, because for all of the critiques that we've spent the last hour or so chatting about with this film, I think a lot of them just have to do with sometimes I don't really meld and don't really like the way that James Gunn writes his characters. But I love the way that he directs a film. I like most of the direction of most of his movies. And like the plots can be hit or miss, but at the end, like there are normally big action set pieces that keep me like locked in. And again, the power of an expanded universe, and if they're going to commit to this, I think this movie succeeds at that being the primary objective. Now, I think that just goes without saying that means this didn't really succeed, in my opinion, at being like purely a Superman film, but to me at least didn't seem like that's what they wanted out of it. And maybe moving forward, if we get a Superman 2 or some kind of like a duo film, kind of akin but in a very different tone to Batman v Superman, you end up with the hopeful character that we've now grown to understand is Cornsweet's interpretation of Superman, and whoever Batman will be and whoever Wonder Woman will be, Martian Manhunter, everyone from the Green Lantern Corps. Like, it just keeps spreading. And this movie got me thinking about what my uncle, like one of my uncles, huge comic book fan growing up, still is. But he grew up reading DC far more than Marvel. And what he always told me, especially when we talked with him growing up about loving these Marvel films and going out and seeing things opening weekend and being so locked into the Avengers, he's like, well, when I was growing up, he hit me with his Unc moment. When I was growing up, you would look forward to seeing like what the dynamic would be between, the gruff attitude of the billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne with the country bumpkin type of Clark Kent and the Amazonian. It keeps going on and on. There's so many interesting characters in the DC universe that this movie gets me excited to see how they're all going to interact with each other. And again, if that is the goal, I think they've entirely succeeded at it. We didn't spend a whole lot of time speaking on the music, but music's a little bit hit or miss for me as well. But like when it has to hit, it hits. It's not very original. That I'm not a fan of. But I do think if it's a combination of the music, the action, the plot, seeing where this movie lets off, it leaves me out of 4. I think it loses that full point because it's just so close to being just that much better. But I hope it just leaves, in my opinion, the type of room that like a Batman Begins leaves for like the masterpiece that was The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight to come out a couple years later. So hopefully what follows this is just kind of like upwards trajectory. And I think at the very end of the day, I appreciate what James Gunn and his team have decided to begin this new DC universe with. You had to start it with Superman. You always had to, and you probably had to decide at a certain point, hey, this is how we're also going to launch X, Y, and Z characters as well, which I think they do. So 4 out of 5, feeling pretty strong on that.
Yeah, you mentioned the music. We always wait to the last minute to
Oh, absolutely. We never hit the music.
We
talk about it a lot off the pod.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But no, I think last thing I will say, very last thing I will say is that, you could tell James Gunn, that's one of the signature things of his style, is the needle drops. I don't think there's any really memorable needle drops. There's only one, like the Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, Mr. Terrific is, I like the Mr. Terrific.
But that's not, I'm not sure if I'm gonna remember the song, honestly. Like it doesn't like hit you like, I mean, Hooked on a Feeling, that was like a home run. I don't know how many home runs you're gonna get in your life.
That was once in a lifetime.
That's once in a lifetime home run in the first Guardians. But then like the fact that the theme is the John Williams theme, basically, I was kind of like, I was very, as someone who really likes film scores, I was disappointed that they didn't at least attempt to try something new. And they really, even from like the opening graphics, it looks very like the original Superman, the Richard Donner Superman movie. I just wish they had tried a little like something different. But I mean, they use the John Williams theme for a reason because it's really good. Yeah. And I mean, I don't mind hearing it. I just wish they had tried something. Tried something different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first. 4 out of 5s across the board. But a movie we enjoyed, and looking forward to the future of the DCU. Again, thank you, Tyler, and everyone that made last night such a fun time. And looking forward to getting this out to the people on YouTube. But Chris, before we wrap up with credits and such, what have you been watching lately? We're going to, I guess, bring this segment back a little bit. If you thought about it, what have you been watching? What do you want to tell the viewers about outside of Superman, what you've been checking out lately?
But yeah, the last 2 movies that I've seen in between F1 and Superman are Days of Thunder, which is a Tom Cruise NASCAR movie. I was very inspired after watching F1 for the second time to watch like a NASCAR movie, and it's very like Top Gun coded as well, like the original Top Gun, because it's directed by the same guy, Tony Scott, and Tom Cruise is the hotshot driver coming in, and it's a very frat boy coded movie, which is very interesting. It felt like very much a product of its time. I thought it was very entertaining, but you could tell like there's some things in there you probably couldn't get away with too much. The freeze frame of that movie, I will say, is maybe the best thing I've ever seen, because it's an old Robert Duvall and Tom Cruise. Robert Duvall basically goes like, race your ass, and then he just starts running, and then Tom Cruise chases him, and there's a freeze frame, and they both just like smile, and then the movie ends. I thought it was incredible. It's one of the greatest freeze frames of all time.
Incredible.
I gave that one 3.5 out of 5 stars because it's still a good movie. And then I watched K-pop Demon Hunters, which is the Netflix animated movie. And this is one where I have a very, like, we could have made a whole episode on this one. But the first, like, 25, this is the first time you're hearing about this.
This is the first time, I still got to watch it. Shout out Audrey Nuna. Shout out my girl Audrey Nuna.
The first 25 minutes of this for me, I probably would never watch again. I honestly, it felt like, maybe just because, like, if it's geared more toward kids, I understand. But there's a lot of just like dialogue and like very like TikTok pace where I was kind of like, okay, this is not going well.
Not Chris's vibe.
But as the story progresses and you sort of get into more of the lore of like the demons and like why they do K-pop and like, you know, what role music plays and like those kind of relationships, it gets better. And I think by the end it recovers to a point where I think I could give it 3 out of 5 stars. The animation is great. I mean, like the Sony, they basically use the Spider-Verse style again, just in like the K-pop form.
Meet the Mitchells, stuff like that.
Yeah, that sort of thing. You know, the Predator, Killer of Killers came out and it has like the Spider-Verse style as well. That's sort of like the In Vogue style of animation is sort of like Pixar's kind of on the decline. The Sony Spider-Verse style is kind of the in style. And K-pop Demon Hunters uses that, and there's some really cool scenes. And I will say that the songs, I mean, despite any like, you know, writing or like pacing things that I may not like, all the songs are bangers.
Let's go.
The songs are like very, very good. On their own, they're great to listen to. In the movie, they're kind of like cut together in a way where it's like, I'm not quite sure. I kind of wanted to hear the whole song. But you know, when you listen to them on your own,
you've been rocking with the soundtrack.
You're like,
damn,
I definitely rock with the soundtrack. So, again, it's kind of a complicated movie, but I'd say it all lands in the middle for me, 3 out of 5.
Cool.
What about you?
What about me? It's been an anime summer for me so far. It's actually really leaning into being a Dawn to Dawn summer. Airing starting this week. Very excited to see that and how that plays out. One of the first mangas I've ever read through, like beginning to end. And I mean, not ending, it's still going right now, but at least catching up after seeing what I thought was one of the more memorable seasons of anime I've seen in my young life. Shout out Dawn to Dawn season 1. But season 2 is already off to a banger. The new intro and endings are still double bangers. They always hit it out of the park. And as someone that's now read and caught up in the story, I'd say it's must-watch TV this year. I think every time Dawn to Dawn is going to continue dropping seasons moving forward and just gaining more and more popularity. It's the first anime I'll recommend to anyone. I think it's my favorite manga, or at least top 3. I'd have to think about it a little bit, but right now I think it's my favorite manga. That, Chainsaw Man, obviously reading a bit of One Piece, but more than anything, Okarun, Momo Ayase, all of the crew and zany characters that are in Dawn to Dawn. Something I live for, Chris. As you know, we watched a lot of it last year, week to week when it was coming out. But really excited for season 2. And friend of the pod, Bradley Kim and I, we got a chance to go and see the movie. About roughly a month ago, where the movie is really just 3 episodes. But those 3 episodes are bangers. The Evil Eye arc, it's fire. And I think that Science Saru, they just hit it out of the park again. Science Saru has done very little to no wrong, in my opinion, over the last 3 to 4 years. And I hope they keep killing it. I mean, if we ever get another Scott Pilgrim, that'd be crazy. But really want to recommend Dawn to Dawn season 2 coming out. One Piece, I've been watching One Piece. I've been trying to catch up, man. Like, I read 500 chapters within the span of like 3 weeks last year, and it just stole my heart. And then time skip happened, and we ended up in a place called Fishman Island. And for the real ball knowers out there, that's a tough arc to make it through. I know there's people who love it, and like, I have full respect, but that's for the Gooners. That's like, I could not read it on an airplane. I cannot watch that in public, but we got to get through it because it's important to the story. And I think I've reached a point where I really like it. But Fishman Island has been holding me up in One Piece, so I'm hoping that I can really like push through this one, get to the good parts, and then just move on to the next island. Because obviously I love Luffy and the crew. I'm a big One Piece fan. I got to catch up, Chris. I hear we're reaching the end times of that arc. But where I think I'll end my segment is just a little teaser for maybe a future episode. Been watching The Bear. Really loved season 4. But I think that's all I'll say about it, because I think that does deserve its own episode, and we'll talk about it as fellow Bear lovers. But The Bear, I think, landed it kind of end to end. Jonas and I watched all of the season over the last week. I will say, it's probably something I'll say during our upcoming review on it at some point. That is a show that deserves week-to-week releases, and I'll never understand why they drop them all at once. But again, maybe a conversation for another day if you've had any thoughts on it.
No, that's true. I mean, we could talk about this like if we do end up doing an episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a show where like I feel like it has the attention of a lot of like people like us by the balls.
Oh,
and
dude,
they really could.
They got us gripped.
They really could. They could do a drip and not a drop if they really wanted to. But no, I definitely think it's more of a. I don't think it quite reaches the heights of seasons 1 and 2 because that's just a hard bar to clear.
Oh man!
But it's definitely better than season 3.
Yeah,
and I think
agree.
it's kind of its own beast. I like it that it's not better, but it's different, which I like. I think it's definitely more of like if you've been following the show, it's very satisfying, like seeing like certain moments happen. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
We're gonna leave it at that.
Leave it at that.
Because, Chris, we've reached the end of our first YouTube episode.
It's cool.
Which is normally the part where I will give you our credits. And for our credits, logo, music, and our executive producer, even though I'm going to be editing this episode, overall, executive producer Jonas Hyllseth, shout out, the guy, the glue to our Lego pieces as we put together this new iteration of the pod. But really want to thank you all for spending time with us today, chatting about Superman. Would recommend going out and seeing it, obviously. And please subscribe, hit like. Why not? This is the first time I get to say this. Follow us on Instagram at Pinoys Versus. We'll put that all in the description below. But very excited to get this journey started with Chris. Hopefully we keep putting out some more fun reviews coming up here. But thank you so much again for listening. This has been another episode of Pinoys Versus the World. My name is Harold Hyllseth.
My name is Chris Ankiko.
And we will chat with you all in the next episode. Peace.